A deal on Dickens, who could resist? A stack of Austen, warmly kissed. Golden Age crime tales twist and turn, every page a treasure to learn. Books keep coming home with me, piles so tall they're all I see. Turn a page and sail the sea, reading always feels so free.
Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. Hopefully for this video I have all my ducks in a row. For my review on True Grit, I ended up being a little bit more disjointed than I wanted to be because I ended up having to get up and run and try to find resources to make the point I was trying to make. And I will try to remember to link that True Grit review at the end of the video or up here somewhere so you can see what I am talking about if you have not already seen the True Grit review. But the book that I'm reviewing now is Shane, and this is also for June on the Range. Now, where True Grit was a new read for me, I read Shane for school. I read about the same time that I did Lilies of the Field, and both of those books were my first, I think they're my first two books where I really noticed the difference between a movie adaptation and a book and being disappointed. For Lilies of the Field, it was because they had combined two characters. And for Shane, I remember feeling that the emotional impact wasn't quite the same. I'm not sure if it was that I didn't like the casting of Alan Ladd, although with his quiet, reserved type feeling, he should have been a good casting choice, and maybe I need to watch Shane again. I'm not sure if I didn't like the casting for the little boy who almost looks like really blank. As I recall, I need to, like I said, rewatch Shane. I do think that the casting for the dad was good, and he was also in 3:10 to Yuma. But I just remember being disappointed. Like, one of the things I was disappointed about is there's a big scene, and it covers quite a few pages in the book about them tackling this stump together. And I remember, I have a vague memory of when I watched it when I was a kid, being disappointed that that stump scene didn't have the same emotional weight, or at least I thought that it didn't have the same emotional weight as the book gave it. Now, I wonder if I would feel differently if I watched it as an adult. But upon rereading Shane, I still really enjoyed this book, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. It did live up to my memory of it. The stump scene, which I was speaking of, while it was very good, it wasn't quite as much as I had built it up in my memory. Still very excellent, though. But there were other things that stuck out to me that I appreciated even more, and I actually forgot about until I reread. And I want to, upon a rewatching of Shane, see how I feel like they handled those instances. The soda pop scene and a couple of the different fights, the relationship between the father and Shane. Because really, while this is a story told by the son, and therefore very much from the point of view of someone who really idolized and looked up to Shane. So when you're looking at Shane, you got to remember that, of course, you're dealing, and this is another story like True Grit, like To Kill a Mockingbird, where you're looking at a story told by a man looking at his childhood memories and going, oh yeah, I see now that XYZ. Now with True Grit, Maddie does less of I see now, because Maddie's sense of her, rightness and everything never really changes, but more akin to Kill a Mockingbird, where you also see Scout going, oh, looking back, I see now. And that's the same thing with your main character, your narrator character, Bob, where he'll look back and go like, I didn't understand then, but I understand now. And actually, I hadn't really thought about it. To some extent, there are similarities between these two as well. These are growing up stories. learning about what it is to be a good person, about quiet strength, although sometimes, like an example, Shane, it's a very different world. And so the quiet strength of Atticus isn't enough for Shane's world. He has to cross back into an area that he doesn't want to. But there are similarities that I hadn't thought about before I start reviewing. But it is another coming of age, growing up kind of story where the child is seeing things in a new way. Although I do feel that Scout, to a certain extent, is more perceptive than Bob. Bob is much more caught up in the romance of Shane and what he thinks of Shane's history and just of everything going around him. It's a difference, I think, between a woman narrating a girl's memories and a man narrating a boy's memories. Also the fact that, Atticus's way of educating, his education level, the way he raised his children is going to be different than the way Bob's parents raised him. They're just different education levels, different time periods, but there is enough of a similarity of just the basic through line of growing up, learning different things about morality and how, what one might see strength as isn't going to be the same as what maybe the world sees strength as. But also, besides Bob's growing up type story and coming to understand things later as he looks back, you have, of course, the story of Shane, the mysterious man who drops into Bob's world and his family's world. And something I didn't remember noticing in the movie as a kid, and something I don't remember noticing as much as a kid when I was reading it either, as this is almost got I hate this term, but it really does come close to what this is talking about, almost like a bromance kind of thing. And this article really has a quote that really encapsulates this feeling. Shane demonstrates Schaefer's strong focus on the social bonds between men, as in the unforgettable scene when Shane and Joe Starrett take their axes to uproot an old tree stump. So this feeling of male friendship and the closeness of these two men just is in the very fabric of this story. A closeness that sometimes doesn't even require words between them. It's not something you see a lot in fiction, I feel. This really strong bond between two male characters, but without any sense that there's anything more than friendship. Because both of them I'm wondering how much I should say from there, but we'll just mention, of course, that Starrett is married and very much loves his wife and basically worships the ground she walks on. And Shane also has very strong feelings for a particular woman. And I don't really want to go into more detail. People who've read the book know what I'm talking about and how that contributes to the story. But really, the focus of this story is this friendship between Shane and Joe, Bob's father, and how that is how the kind of person Joe is really helps bring out the best in Shane, something that was already there, but it brings out the best in him. And it shows two different kinds of strength. Both of them do have that level of quiet strength, but then there's the part of Shane that is in his past, that mysterious past that he can't quite escape. It's not a very long book. It's only 149 pages. It's a very quick read. I think that I read it over a couple days. I love this cover. This is the cover I had in school. Now, this book must have been someone else's school book, because there are highlights in it. And I actually didn't mind. I would find myself wondering, like, okay, why did they use this color to highlight this? Because there was definitely a choice to use pink or orange. And I'm not sure if this was the person upon a reread chose to use a different highlighter, or if there were things that they had for an assignment and they wanted to remember, and so they used different highlighters. Now, when I had something I wanted to highlight, I just used a different color even than they did, something I didn't see them using, just because I wanted to remember something. But I felt like I had a little bit more freedom, for lack of a better term, because I don't normally highlight much in fiction books, but because this was already highlighted in, I just was like, well, sure, why not? I'm gonna highlight this one part. And that's Shane talking to Bob about a gun being a tool. It's no better or worse than the man who wields it and how he chooses to wield it. Now, that's not the exact quote, but it's close enough. But yeah, I think the characters are very well drawn. While the plot itself is very important, the most important part of this book is the characterizations. I feel like the author does a good job of letting you see the world, but not getting bogged down in description to the point where you're just like, ugh, more description. It feels necessary. It feels like things that Bob would notice. And Bob is very much a normal boy getting in trouble and just doing things that kids do. But his devotion to both his father and Shane is very touching throughout the book. I love the relationships in this. I love the way I feel like the book gets better and better as it goes along. And it really is funny that while you have strong relationships for the whole family with Shane, really the core relationship for Shane is that one with Joe Starrett. It's just such a cool thing that I just don't feel like we see enough of, are these friendship driven stories with two men just having a really strong friendship that goes deeper than words, and sometimes they don't even need words. So very enjoyable. Just some facts about the author and about Shane. So Jack Schaefer was born in 1901, and he died on January 24th, 1991. So they also mentioned that he really gets kind of forgotten outside of Shane, but that Shane rarely gets recognized for the classic it is. I don't know whether or not I agree about that. Like I said, I read Shane in school, so I thought that it was kind of like, when you read something in school, it almost feels like it hits that classic status. Like, not just anything gets read in school, and Shane was one of those books that I read. I can't remember if I wrote a report on it or what, but I know I read this in school. Then some of his early favorites that he had were the Tarzan stories, Dumas's historical novels, and he began reading Charles Dickens, Zane Grey, and other authors after he read those. He had a degree in 18th century English literature from Columbia University, and when he wanted to go and study the development of motion pictures and went to the thesis committee, they kind of mocked him. So he got frustrated with the idea of becoming a professional scholar, and that the fact that he felt that the university was ignoring the world around them. So he ended up entering journalism. While he was with the Norfolk, Virginia pilot, he started writing fiction to calm down in the evenings, and this was in 1945. Shane was first serialized in the Argosy magazine under the title Writer from Nowhere. But it says the greatest secret of Shane is that its author labored over the story, destined to be counted among the best Western fictions of all time, and he had never traveled farther west than Cleveland at that point. Now later on, he moved to a ranch outside of Santa Fe. That was in 1955, and he died in town in 1991. And there was a literary critic who said, Jack Schaefer found the West in himself and then found himself in the West. After Shane, Schaefer wrote another short novel called First Blood, which was made into 1953 film The Silver Whip, starring Robert Wagner. In 1963, you have Mount Walsh, which was adapted for a 1970 film with Lee Marvin, Jean Monroe, and Jack Palance. Jack Palance. Sorry, I've seen Jack Palance in several things. And anyway. And then in 2003, Mount Walsh was remade into a more faithful TV adaptation starring Tom Selleck. Other films based on Schaefer works include Tribute to Batman with James Cagney. I actually did not know that James Cagney did anything in the Westerns in 1956. Based on the short story Hangings for the Lucky. Trooper Hook in 1957, featuring Joel McCrea and Barbara Stanwyck, and adapted from the story Sergeant Hawk. And 1964's Advance to the Rear was taken from the 1957 novel Company of Cowards. And I know that all these movies are older because I actually recognize the actor names. So, continue on to some Shane facts. He also wrote I mentioned First Blood, but he also wrote one called Canyon. I don't think I mentioned that one. Sorry, my pen dropped here. He next tried children's literature with Old Raymond, a book that was later awarded the Newbery Honor Roll. Let's see. By 1961, Schaefer had deemed the Western novel dead and began to write conservationist novels, spurred by his move to Albuquerque, New Mexico. 50 years after its publication, Shane had sold over 12 million copies and had been translated into 30 foreign languages. In 1985, the Western Writers of America named it the best Western novel ever written, a decade after the Western Literature Association gave Schaefer its Distinguished Achievement Award. So, the first source here that I have is from the Ohio Reading Road Trip. It looks like it's connected to a school. Okay, so 2004 Think TV Network, Greater Dayton Public Television. So that's his source. The other source I have is from the Santa Fe NewMexican.com, and it's an article that was written, not sure when this was written. So it was an article that was on Schaefer, and the article's by Molly Boyle, it looks like, and this is what Schaefer looked like. So yeah, I really recommend Shane. Most people, I think, probably have read it. If I'm not sure, maybe other people have read it in school too. I mean, like I said, that's the way I read it, and I just kind of assumed that Shane was just one of those stories people read in school. I really enjoy this. I might need to give the movie another go. I just don't remember it being as good as the book. And I can't remember being able to quite put my feeling on it. I'm not sure if I just didn't like the casting of Alan Ladd or the boy, or if it just missed something of the feel. And I just wonder maybe if it's because we can't hear Bob's internal thinking, that there's some things that are going to be missed that older Bob mentions that younger Bob noticed, or that older Bob, upon looking back, realizes, oh, that's what was going on. And I think that that's something that the movie I don't think it really would have had the capacity to pull fully everything that's the subtext of this novel. This novel has a lot of subtext, a lot of things that are going on under the surface. It's a lot quieter of a novel. It has a lot simmering under the surface. Whereas with True Grit, I think the reason why you can translate Maddie so much easier and get the feeling of her in spite of not having her internal monologue is that Maddie is such a blunt character, and there isn't a lot under the surface. If there's something that Maddie thinks, she says it. And it's actually pretty much the same with most people that she deals with. A lot of people say what they mean and they act upon it. It's very much of a different novel, even though they are both dealing in a Western time period It's just the differences of personalities. This is just very much more of a quiet strength of things that I think that the things that go on in Shane mean more. I think that while Maddie, you're dealing with a young girl's pain and her trying to get what she feels is the best justice for her father, there aren't necessarily a lot of lessons being learned or character growth of Maddie. Maddie, at the beginning of the book at 14, feels like it's pretty close to Maddie 60 years later when she's telling it. Maddie doesn't change a whole lot. Whereas in Shane, you get that same feeling that you do with To Kill a Mockingbird, where you have a character who is learning lessons in a way that kind of goes against what everyone else thinks. Why don't you pull out everyone else's fathers, they do this. Why aren't you doing that? Why are you acting against the grain? And then learning that sometimes strength is different. And maybe I didn't realize it at this time, what I was being taught. Now, I think Scout is a lot more perceptive than Bob, or at least a young Scott was a lot more perceptive than Bob. Older Bob, looking back, does pick up on things much like Scout does, but he has a lot more to go like, oh yeah, I didn't get this at the time. I didn't get that at the time. I now see what Shane was trying to tell me. But once I saw, he wasn't around for me to let him know. You end the book with a feeling of satisfaction, but also I think a tinge of sadness. It ends the way that it should and probably always would have when you are dealing with these characters. I don't think it could have really ended any other way. Because no matter what, even in the West where you can become a different person and start over, sometimes the past, you just can't escape it. And it's just, Shane is just such a really awesome character-driven novel, and I highly recommend it. Hi, Editing Talia here. I forgot to mention that another aspect to Shane that is similar to Kill a Mockingbird is the theme of the importance of family and family relationships. Now, in Shane's case, it is also a case of the importance of found family. And I just felt like I would be remiss if I didn't mention that thread that runs through the story, that I'd be missing a major aspect of Shane. But thank you very much for joining me. Have you read Shane? Do you feel the same way I do about it? And if not, why? What do you feel could have been done better? And are you a fan of the movie with Alan Ladd? Do you feel that it got all of the undercurrents that are milling around within the book? Or do you feel like I do, that there's certain things that really the movie didn't have? It almost was doomed to not be able to catch everything just because this is such, in certain ways, a subtle book. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope that you enjoyed this review of True Grit. Not True Grit. True Grit was the other book. Hope you enjoyed this review of Shane. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. God bless. Bye.
Books keep coming home with me. Piles so tall, they're all I see. Turn a page and sail the sea. Reading always feels so free.